Going live.
Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to the shop. Tonight we're going to be talking about weird and wonderful tools, things that are kind of different. They're not the standard planes, but they are very interesting and usually they end up being very fun. So yes, we're going to have a good bit of time with that. We do have a few announcements coming up this weekend. Actually, in about 48 hours, I am going to be flying out to the West Coast. We're going to go out to Oregon, and there is the Best in the West. It is a tool show, and it's for the Pacific Northwest tool collectors, and it is the largest tool show in the West. So it's phenomenal. It's a 3-day thing. It'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tools for sale, auctions, demonstrations, tailgate sales, all hand tool fun. And I'll be doing a few live videos of it. So if you're going to be there, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Flag me down. I'm going to try and bring a few shirts to sell, stickers to give away and things like that. As long as I remember and I have enough space to actually lug them out there, which I should because I'll have to have space to lug tools back. Yes. So that's coming up this weekend. And then, we have the next national MWTCA meet, and that is the largest tool sale in the world. That one's in Michigan City, Indiana. That one is coming up the end of September, so a little over a month away. And that one I'm actually going to be giving a talk at. So if you want to come see me or hang out, we'll be having a lot of fun at that one. So yes, stay tuned. Oh, the other announcement, I forgot. I'm going to be making, I'm going to be doing a video on making a panel gauge here soon. I'm going to do a live video so you can build along with me. And so it'll be one of those Saturday builds. And the idea is we'll make the whole panel gauge in one sitting. And so you can actually build along with me. If you want to do that, I have the plans available on my website. I just put them up today. I have a link to them down below. Go to woodbywright.com/shop. And they're on there. Plans are completely free. We have the cut list for everything, the hardware you can buy for it, links to all of that. So if you want to build along with me and build the same thing, you can do that. It's going to be very similar to this one with a brass wear strip in there, but it'll be one of those things you can modify to fit your own needs, wants, and desires. So that'll be coming up, I think, the 17th, I think is when we're fitting it. Or, no, the 17th I'm gone. I'm gone 17th. What is it? I don't know. It'll be coming up sometime. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to build along, you can get the plans now and download them currently on the website. All that out of the way, if you are new here, you can go down in the description down below and you can see a list of all of the questions with timestamps and jump straight to those. If you have any questions and you are live, go ahead and throw those in the chat and we'll get to what we can. With all that out of the way, let's have a little bit of fun. Unless there's any questions I need to hit before we get going. No, good.
I mean, we'll get to them, I think, in the
So, let's start with the weirdest and coolest of them all. Oh, my word.
Yourself?
Yes, myself. No, I forgot. I'm like, where's my second camera? I set up everything else except for that. I skipped the checklist. So, this. We're going to start with the Stanley 55 because what else are you going to start with? The Stanley 55 is known as the king of hand planes, and it is a seriously cool tool. And this one, it's known as a combination plane. Come on, flip over. There we go. A combination plane, and this will do pretty much anything all of these wooden profile planes up here, that will do it, all of them. And so we have this, we have 3 boxes, or it originally came with 3 boxes. I have 4 because I also have a box for the 45. And it has all of these different profiles and cutters that it can do. And a lot of people thought that this set of boxes was the limitation. It could do this many. And honestly, this was about half of the total collection of them. And there are some other really weird irons out there, and some like this one, which we may actually experiment with. I've never actually used this one, so if you guys want to see me do that, let me know. But this is a 5-bead iron. So it should be able to do that. And the 55 is known as the king of hand planes, and it really is a seriously fun hand plane because it can do everything. The problem is, as like with a lot of these tools, you don't need it. There's only a few things that this can do that the 45 cannot do, and the 45 is much cheaper. And there's only a few things that the 45 can do that the 50 can't do. And the 50 is much cheaper. It's a much simpler plane. And so if you're looking for one of them, the 50 is really the one to get. This can do beating, this can do plows, this can do most of the standard things you want to do. If you need to do a little bit more than the 45, but very rarely do you need to do all of the crazy molding that this can do. So let me show you some of the features of this thing. When we break it all apart, this beast has two fences, one on either side, which I got to loosen it up. Fences come off, and then there's two skates. And these ones, there's a screw here and a screw here that lock it down onto this rod so it can slide in and out. And this is the main skate. The main skate has the tote. It holds the iron, has the clamp in here. It has the depth stop. It has the cutting spur can go back here, which you're never going to use. And it's got these two rods that everything slides on. So you can see here we have an iron sticking out, and it's sticking off way off over here. So we need something to support this side. That's what the second skate is for. And at this point, it's identical to the Stanley 45. It can do all of that. But this one also has this weird knob back here. And with this, I can loosen up these two weird screws over here. Let me grab an Allen wrench. Don't need an Allen wrench, I just need something that will slide into these little holes. And I can loosen that up. And I can loosen that up. Come on, loosen. Maybe. Should I grab the bigger end? I haven't changed this one in a little while. Yeah, I need to grab the bigger one. That one's flexing. Here, when in doubt, grab one step larger. There we go. So we loosen these two up, and now this skate can actually move up and down. And so with this screw here, I can extend this skate to go lower and lower and lower. Let me show you from this side. You can see how it's sticking out a little bit lower than the first skate. And the more I turn it, the more it sticks out lower and lower and lower and a little farther and farther. And what that allows you to do is some of these irons, you need one skate to be down low over here, and you need another skate to be up high over here. So with the 55, you can do these weirdos. And let's do, we find one that's actually sharp. This one? Yeah, that one should be sharp enough. So let's do this weird OG pattern on here. And so that's one of the things I want to do tonight is actually set some of these up and show what's needed on here. So this one we're going to loosen up like that. Pull this iron out and a little more. Pull that iron out. This iron goes in. When the irons go in, they need to bed all the way down flush to the sole. So I'm going to be pushing this all the way in. I'm going to tighten this up just a little bit. And now I'm going to advance it forward with this screw. And I'm going to be pushing the iron forward. And this one needs to go through until the front skate is right on the bottom edge of this profile. And so I'm going to be lifting it up and looking at it. And I don't want the skate to be the lowest thing. I want the iron to be the lowest thing, which is going to be right about there. So now I have this in place so that the iron is just sticking out a little bit farther on this point. Once that's in, I can lock this down. And everything is set up for that first skate. Now for the second skate, we're going to slide this on. And it should slide up and over. And this one I need to back it down until it's sticking out just the right amount on this front point, which should be right about there. Then I can stick this in, tighten this up, tighten this up. If I'm really getting picky, I'd make sure my two skates are parallel. But in this case, I'm going to hold off on that. And it's really rare that I ever get that picky. Just tighten those up a little bit. Now the next thing I need to do is set the skate this way on it, because I can still move that in and out. I'm going to set it in until it's just a little bit inside the iron here. Running my finger on there. And then I can tighten it down with this one. And I can tighten it down with this one. And in this case, I want the fence to be flat up against this surface. So I'm going to grab this fence, and I'm going to put it down here on the lower hole. The lower hole means that the fence is going to then push up against this face. If I put it on the upper hole with a regular iron, it would actually go underneath it. In this case, it's not going to. So in this case, it really it's not going to matter which one I'm in because this blade sticks down a little bit lower than the others. So once that's in place, we can tighten this down. Let's take it for a swing. Any questions so far?
Steeltoe wants to know if you can show how to sharpen the blades on the Stanley 55 when you're done.
I'm not going to do that one tonight. However, I do have a video showing how to sharpen blades on a Stanley 45. And the thing is, you don't sharpen them to the same honing and characteristic you do with a normal one. Usually I'm going to sharpen them to like 400 grit-ish. They don't need to be any sharper than that because you're usually going to come back with a card scraper and clean them up a little bit. So let me grab something that I can put that profile into. Here we go. Let's put it into this board. It's going to be kind of long. I'll just do it right here on the end. But then we can set up the camera so that you can actually see. And I can drop it. Exit. There we go. Oop, focus on there. There we go. So now I can grab the 45. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm pushing it up against. I want this fence to be up against that. That's the most important thing. Keep the fence tight against that. If you do nothing else, do that. Oop, diving in. See, I didn't keep the fence up against it. It kind of slid off the side. Because right now, the only thing that's holding is this tiny skate here. And if that skate slides off, it's going to dive in. Thankfully, I still got a good bit more material to go through before. And now it's wanting to catch over there because I did it once. So I can be very, very careful. Very, very light passes. I think I'm actually going against the grain there too. Oh no, I'm diving in again.
There,
this is a really hard one.
website that would show you what the finished one would look like with the blade, or do you just kind of?
It's just a negative of the blade.
Well, yeah.
So when you're holding it,
better visualizers.
You just go like
others.
that, and that shows you what it would profile to. I don't know of a website that would do that. It would be actually kind of nice. I should probably do that with a bunch of them. The problem is, the set it comes with is less than half of all the blades out there. There are lots of extras that could be purchased.
I'm just saying, I'm not a visualizer.
No, you're not. Visualization is not your expertise.
Give me sick people.
And a lot of people absolutely love the 55, and a lot of people don't. Oh, I see. What's happening is, like, why am I running into this? This skate, my second skate, is over just a little bit. And so that's actually interfering with the groove it should be cutting. So I need to loosen it up and slide it over just a few hundredths. About there.
Okay, so does this number 55 have a front center tower assembly?
A front center, well, it has a another step that can go in here on the second skate. There are a bunch of other extras, a whole lot of other extras, and a lot of them are just for one's particular cutter.
Oh, can you change your camera?
Just a second, let me make sure I'm getting this and I'll switch over. Now I'm diving. Come on, stay on. Now that I've completely mangled this one live, here, I'll show you how bad it looks. What's happening is, actually, here, I'm going to do this a little bit easier. Now that I have that in there, because I have the skate over on this farthest bump over. So I'm actually going to move it over to the second one. What that does is it puts, because that skate is the whole sole of the plane. And so if it's not sliding on that skate, it's just going to dive in and go deeper. And so hopefully this will stop it from diving in. And I think it is. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. There's the answer to the problem. A lot of people absolutely love this because it does really cool things in really cool ways. A lot of people absolutely hate it because it can be a pain to set up. Okay, now I'm not taking quite deep enough cut. And you can see I'm kind of going back and forth and trying things and trying things. You're always going to want to test these out. Loosen it up. I need to lift the skate up just a little bit. It's just not taking quite a deep enough shaving. So to do that, I'm just going to give it like about that turn. Let me take a look at it. A little more. I want to take a decent cut, but not too deep. And then we can tighten it back up. And it's a little fiddly. And a lot of the fun tools are really fiddly. They're not just a chisel that you grab, you sharpen, you go. Okay, that might be a bit too much. It's a heavy cut, but it's taking it. Yeah, it's a bit too much. Let's try it again. And you guys can, let me see, I want to push it down a little bit, so turn it the other way. If you have a particular tool you want to see me do, throw that in the comments, and we'll decide which one we want to do next. But most people were asking for the 55 ahead of time, so I figured we'd start with that one. Yeah, let's give that a try. There we go. There we go. Now she's singing the song. And we're starting to get in that second mold. Oops, sorry. Thought it was over there. The other thing I'm being very careful about is trying to keep it upright. There, now I'm getting that profile all the way across. Here, move you in so you can see that a little better. Focus, there we go. So now we can get that profile edge. So we've got a small bead up here, and a small bead down here, and then an OG between them. An OG is a pattern that has a convex and a concave joined together. And so in this case, I would either run until my depth stop was set up, but in this case I don't have it set up, so it's just going to keep going. Or I go until my profile, ooh, don't bend it. Yeah, that's about where I get. And so this way I get a little bit, some fuzzies in here. I come and take a card scraper and just clean those up. So usually this isn't the final thing to touch the wood. You're going to have a profile that will come in and just scratch it clean. So that's the 55. It is a lot of fun, and it can do some really cool things. But in all honesty, 99% of the time, it does grooves, and then 0.5% of the time it does beading, and another 0.5% of the time it does tongues, and then the tiny, tiny minuscule of everything else are all those really cool things. You're generally going to be doing things that the 45 or the 50 can do. Any questions?
Not necessarily related to the 55.
Let's do the compass plane.
That is a request.
That is a request? Cool. So I've got a board here. I got a whole bunch of boards, actually. And I'm going to put a concave shape into this. Maybe I'll do a convex at the end. So I've got this curvature here. I'll grab a mallet and a chisel. Normally I'll have it drilled on, I'll have it drawn on the side and shaped out what I want. And I'm going to get it close with the chisel. The chisel can just come in and chop out a bunch of things. This was one big stroke of chisel coming this way, one big stroke of chisel coming this way. Just popped out all of that. And I'll get it down close to it. If I really want to be careful, I could do saw kerfs coming in to chop that out. And then I'm going to come in with a spoke shave. With the spoke shave, I'm going to refine this. I'm going to get it really close to that line. From one side. Now I don't have a line drawn on here, probably should have. So that's actually looking pretty good. And often you can actually get passable with that. If you really want to detail it, you can come in with a file or a rasp or something like that and really clean it out. But we want to take this one step farther. So this is the Stanley 113 compass plane. And it will allow you to do, well, here we do, you can do convex shapes. Turn, 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 turn. And you can see over here on the side, it will turn the sole into a convex shape. There's this gear here, or we can turn it the other way. In this case, we're going to turn it into a concave shape, or the blade, the bed will be a convex, but we want to do this concave space. So I'm going to keep turning that, and you can see the gears meshing the other direction. I want to set it on here until I push it down, and it's engaging. Just a little more, like about there. No, it's not even engaging here, so I'm not actually hitting anything on that side. Am I hitting anything on this side? And I usually do both of them just to make sure. So let's pull it up a little bit more. It would help if I actually advance the iron. Ooh, why is my iron not sticking out? Well, let's advance this the old-fashioned way. With a, where's my brass one? I don't know. So I need to get the stick out a little more. There. There we go. And so I'm going to do this to the halfway point. This is kind of like a jointer in that it only does the high spots. It will always hit right here at the beginning. And then if there's nothing, like right there, it's not hitting anything. And then it'll hit at the far end where it's running into. Then I'm going to flip it around and go the other direction. And I'm always hitting at the beginning. And it's hard to do backwards and reverse. Normally I'd move my body around. There's a camera there this time. So I could do the Japanese thing and pull it towards me. And the nice thing about this is it pretty much guarantees you're getting a perfectly rounded radius. So it's a really nice smooth radius all the way across. So you can see that clean transition all the way across. So the compass plane is not there to do the work of removing the material. It's the last plane. It's like the smoothing plane of the detail. You actually rough it all out with everything else. And then for the last 4 or 5 passes, you come in with this and you clean it up. How many times have I actually used this on a project? Dresser. There's one other one. I did one other project with it. And I can't remember what it was.
Was it this?
The bed. The arches on the bed. And that one I didn't even need to because they were so gradual. I probably could have done it with a number 4 and just had it stick out a good bit farther.
So how would you determine using a compass plane versus like a card scraper?
Well, I mean, a card scraper would be one step finer because the card scrapers are not going to remove that much material. This gets it to an exact shape. So like I could get everything to an exact shape with this. It'd just be a little more difficult. I'd have to be finicky and spot clean up. Whereas with this, it's like jointing a board. You could joint a board with this. You'd have to be very finicky and just hit one spot or another. But it'd be very easy to dig in too much in one area. Whereas with a jointing plane, you can just do the whole thing at once. And this does the exact same thing, but for something that isn't flat. It does rounding. So this is a jointer plane for rounded edges. And so if you're doing a lot of curves, this is such a nice tool to have. But it's never more than a nice tool to have. It is never necessary. And I've used it twice for projects, but it's always one that I get a lot of questions about. So it's not a tool you use. And I've got this one up here that I restored. This is the earlier version. Let me show you this, because if you're looking to buy one, you're going to see 2 main types from Stanley. They both have this gearing mechanism on there, like that. It
looks like hands in front of itself.
What's that?
The gears look like
yeah. But the advancing mechanism, the older one, has this wheel on here.
Is that
and you
a
actually
number
use
20?
this. What's that?
Is that considered a number 20?
No, they're 131.
They're both 131. Okay.
Yep. And so this one has a wheel that moves it forward. This wheel is a really bad mechanism. It just doesn't quite work as well. You see this one, they would have a handle that originally looked like this. But this was given to me by a friend, and his son actually made this handle because it was missing one. And so later on, they made them like this, and they look just like a regular plane. Lever cap, depth adjustment, yoke, it's the exact same mechanism. Actually, the blade and iron are the same size as a number 3. So if you're going to buy one, this is the better of the two. Though there's also the Stanley 120, which is also another compass plane. And honestly, if I had to pick one, that would be the one I want. It is the simpler of them. It doesn't look as cool, but it is the more stout. And so if you had to pick one just to be a user, that's probably the one I would get. Second would be this. Don't pick up one of the early ones as a user. They're just not going to treat you as well.
So we have a question, if you can show up a bit more on setting up the blade on that.
Setting up the blade on the compass plane?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, this one, it's exactly the same as any other. The problem I have is that my chip breaker...
Switch cameras.
Sorry. My chip breaker is actually the wrong one for this one. This chip breaker was been modified, and so because of that, it doesn't stick it out quite as far. And so I actually need to back it up a little bit so that it's not right up by the edge. And so when I was adjusting it, I was using the hammer method to adjust it, which is what you do for wooden body planes, because my depth adjuster can't adjust it forward any farther because the chip breaker is wrong. So I could get the right chip breaker on there, or I could just use this to tap it that little bit farther forward to actually make it engage, because it can't push it far enough forward. But yeah, need a different chip breaker. Other than that, it's exactly the same as any standard Stanley plane. You put that in, you slide that in, you lock it down, you adjust your depth. It even has the lateral adjuster for side to side. So exactly like any other plane. But yeah, they're a lot of fun though. And honestly, if you've ever tried to really fare one out nicely with a spoke shave, you can do it, but it's a pain, and this is just so fast. You can take it from something that's obviously not smooth to something that is just perfectly smooth, just instantly, and that's where it shines. But it's really only that last shaving. You can't use it to create the dip. You have to just use it to refine the dip, which is what my wife does with me. Okay,
Your mama's
questions?
on, just so you know.
Ah, yes, she just got back from another mission trip.
So a couple more follow-up questions to the compass plane.
Cool.
Do you set it flat and then make it round?
Well, one of the things that people are, the problem that a lot of people have when they first set it up is that they lay it out and they say it needs to be exactly this radius. And so they set it to exactly that radius and they go to town on it. The problem is the sole flexes and bends. This sole, you're never going to flatten it. And so you can't set this to an exact radius. You always set this to a slightly smaller radius than what you want to make. And you use it to kind of spot clean up. Because theoretically, if everything were perfect, you could set this to the exact radius and it will stop cutting when it hit that exact radius. But the sole flexes and you're never going to quite do that. So usually what you do is you make it ever so slightly smaller than you want, and you just go until you hit the line. And so, when I was setting it up, I was just flexing it until it fit in there, and I knew it was actually catching at the bottom of the cut. So here, let me actually show you the difference in radius. So I've got something that's out of focus again. There we go. So I've got that radius, and I put this on here, and I don't know if you can see, there you go. There's a gap here. So this is a smaller radius than what I was actually cutting. Because when you're actually cutting, you're usually touching the mouth and the heel, or the mouth and the toe. It's rare that you're touching all three places. You're kind of pushing one side or the other to make the cut. So setting the exact radius on...
I was like,
don't go to blackout. Setting the exact radius on this is not something you really mess with. Now I know there's going to be a few perfectionists out there like, yes, you can do that. You can do that, but in the actual reality of average, everyday person, it's not going to make any difference. Here's one of my favorites.
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry.
I
Other
said I had
questions?
one more question for the...
Oh, what's that?
Can you make an oval rabbet with a compass plane? A shaker box lid has an oval lid.
No, you can't make a rabbet because the iron doesn't come all the way to the outside. There is such a thing as a rabbeted compass plane, but generally they're one-off made things. And one of the videos I've been wanting to do is actually making an adjustable wooden compass plane, because there are fun ways to do that. Yeah, they don't make rabbeted compasses. Usually if you want to make a curved rabbet, you carve it. It sounds difficult, but it's surprisingly easy. Just takes a little bit of time and effort and patience, and it goes through pretty quickly. Is that good?
Now you can move on.
Okay.
I mean, I have requests, so which one are you doing next?
What's next? Sorry.
How about a Stanley 92 / Rabbet Marking Gauge? Do you have one of those?
Oh, do I have it? Yeah. The 92? 95.
They typed
Oh, the
in
92 is longer. Yeah, here. This is the 95. The 92, if I remember correctly, the 92 is the longer one. I'm horrible with the numbers. And it is a marking gauge. And there are two beams on here. These two beams, let me actually zoom in a little closer on this. These two beams, you can loosen up this, and you can slide them in and out. And so the beams can poke out the ends like that and that. But then on this one, it also has this tooth that comes over here and pokes out on the side. And these, they work just like a marking gauge in that I could set it up like this, and I could mark like this. And sometimes I've used it to do small marking gauge marks. But where they really shine is using this one on the side, is if I have a 90-degree joint. Here, let me actually back this up a little bit. If I have a point where there's a board with a 90-degree ledge on here, and I want to mark up a certain distance, I could use a marking gauge and mark down from this ledge, but that wouldn't be as accurate as marking up from this if I wanted to. So in this case, this one, I have this little foot I can bring up, and this foot is sticking out right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Here. There we go. Little foot sticking out here. And so I can adjust that foot to be exactly where I want. So I can put this on here, and I can make a mark at that point. And now I have a mark up the edge. Usability for it. When I got it, I thought, oh, I'm going to show all sorts of different uses and functions for this. I have never once used it. And there are very specific uses for this where it'd be very valuable, but they are rare. And honestly, I have never actually come across one. So yeah, I don't use it very often. So for those of you who asked it, I hope that answers your question, because they're kind of nifty. They're just a marking gauge, but the marking gauge is on, if you imagine it being, in this case you have a beam that comes out and the marking pin is on the beam. Well, in this case, the marking is still on the beam, but it's in the middle of the fence. So if you just imagine it that way, that's what this is. So yeah, you can use it like a normal marking gauge, but only up to 1 inch. And in general, I'd rather use that one. Any questions particular on that one?
In theory, that you could hold it stable more all the way around the way it's made versus a different marking gauge?
Not really.
Okay.
There's certain times where you need to be able to mark up from a surface. And you can't do that with this. Like on this one, I could mark down from this surface, but if this surface isn't true, or I'm referencing this surface, I need to be able to mark up from that surface, and that's where this comes in.
Gotcha.
And that's really the only direct application. There are going to be lots of other applications where people have used it to do other things, but most of those, there's a way you can do that with the regular marking gauge. And so it's one of those tools where, yeah, I would love to find a good use for it, but had this one for about 4 or 5 years now, and I've never used it. At least not ever used it in a project. I've used it quite a few times because I want to use it, but I've never actually used it in a place where this wouldn't be my go-to tool. So, in the next, is there another one or another question?
So the last question specific to a tool is, can you achieve tongue and groove with the Stanley 45?
Oh yeah, yep. Actually, let me show you the tongue and groove irons. Actually, I don't have a tonguing iron, which is weird. I thought I had a tonguing iron. Where's my? I've got to have a tonguing iron. Don't I have a tonguing iron? Because I've got a whole pile of other irons back here that don't fit into that. Yeah, here's the front tower he was talking about. So this can mount into, where is my 55? There it is. This can mount into here and actually end up as, well, this would have to be out of the way, as another depth stop. And there's several tools that need this particular, oh, wow, I'm really focused on it.
I was
wow,
like,
there's several tools that need this. However, I've never actually used this because I've never needed any of those specific cutters. So yeah, whoever was asking for that earlier. There's several other additions. Yeah, tongue and groove. So, oh, I do have a tonguing plane. Good. I thought I had one. So what you have is this, and then I would have a 1/4 inch. And so I've got a tonguing iron and a grooving iron, and you just pick the ones that match. And usually your grooving iron will be ever so slightly larger because you don't want it to be crazy tight. And you could choose the one that is right on there. No, not that one. Actually, I don't think I have one that's really tight. You want this one to be ever so slightly larger. So for the groove, it's a grooving plane. Easy peasy. For the tongue, it's a tonguing plane. Easy peasy. It's the exact same thing, except for rather than cutting the groove down the middle, it's cutting a groove on either side. And usually, these are going to be much larger than you need. If you're cutting a 3/4 inch wide board with a 1/4 inch on either side, then this is just going to overhang on either side. These being bigger is just so you can do a wider board. This will do up to 1 1/4 inch wide board. The only thing that's a problem with this is for the 45, the depth stop is over here on the side. And so if you're making a groove, that's not a problem because it will run on the cheek over on the side. But if you're doing a tongue, there is no cheek over on the side for it, and you actually need it to run and stop on the tongue. And so for that, they make this weird little thing. And I currently have it on my window sash. Let's see if I can take it off here. Is that the right? No, it's not going to fit. It's a smaller one. Let me grab a screwdriver. Oh my, we're running out of time. I'm having too much fun here. So this little step here can actually come off of this, and it will slide onto here. Loosen it up just a little bit more. Oh, it won't fit on my tonguing plane. So I'll keep it on this one. The one for the tonguing plane would be a little smaller. I don't have one apparently. And so what this is basically a depth stop. And so as it's cutting, eventually that centerpiece is going to run into the tongue that it's creating, and it will stop cutting. So that's your depth stop when you're working with those. But yes, it does tongue and groove. You can do tongue and groove with the 45. If you set it up right, you can use the 45 too. Though it's not quite as good for that as the 45 and 55. But yes, very easy to do, and they do them very, very well. Speaking of tongue and groove, let me show you one of my favorite little tools. This is the swing arm, Stanley number 48. And so what this is it has this arm that spins around. And so this, let me set it up correctly, first for this one. So this is a tongue and groove plane. And it's currently set up to cut the groove. And when I pull this pin and spin it around, now it will cut the tongue. And as long as you set these up perfectly, they will cut it exactly each time. And let me show you how it works. So let's cut the groove first, and let's cut the groove in, find a scrap piece of wood that I can cut in. Here, let's do it in this one. So, nope. Actually, it might not be tall enough. Let's see. Yeah, we can go. So on this one, we're going to cut a groove. Again, I'm holding the fence tight against, and I'm keeping it out of focus, holding the fence tight against the surface, cutting a groove, and I normally cut it until it bottoms out. But in this case, we want to then go and cut the tongue. So let's cut the tongue on another scrap of wood. Oh yeah, here, this one I was playing with the tongue earlier. Let's see if I can continue it. Oops, throwing screwdrivers. And this one, I just spun this fence around, and now I'm going against the grain on this one. And as long as my fence references the face side on each board, I would go until it bottoms out, and I've got a tongue and a groove that fit together, just like that. This is such a fun little tool. The problem is, this thing is crazy finicky. You have to have both of the irons, and the two irons are independent. And they have to be adjusted with a plane mallet. There is no mechanical adjustment on them. They just move in and out by striking them. Or you loosen it this way and you can micro adjust them, but for doing the fine adjustment, it's easiest done with a mallet. Then number two, you have to make sure that they're both set tight against this center wedge. And that is what actually creates the step. As long as this iron is precisely the same thickness as this center wedge, then they should work. Also, you notice that the second iron is larger, and so that's so I could do boards that aren't just 3/4 inch wide. I could do a board up to 1 1/4 inch wide. Now, it would mean my tongue isn't perfectly centered in the board. It would be off-centered slightly. It would be a 1/4 inch down from the face, but that doesn't make any difference. So it's kind of an interesting tool. And if I'm going to do tongue and grooves right now, this is the one I'm going to grab. So if I need to do tongue and grooves, I like this because it's very fast and easy, as long as it's set up right. I just have to understand if I'm going to use it, I need to dedicate a certain amount of time to its setup. And usually for me, that's a good 10 to 15 minutes because I need to do 5 or 6 samples of tongue and groove and tongue and groove and tongue and groove and put them together and mount them exactly until they all line up perfectly and the world is happy. But once it's set up, it's lickety-split. The only time I wouldn't use that is if I had a matched pair of tongue and groove. And I used to have those, but I gave them away to a friend. And so actually I've made 2 pairs in the past and I gave both of them away. And so you'd have a groove plane and a tongue plane, and they're pre-set up to match each other. And because they're wooden bodies, they don't change enough. And so you're just setting the depth of cutter, and they make it so much faster and easier if you have something that's already set up and ready to go on it. So usually that's what I want to do. But if I don't have a dedicated tongue and groove set, this is a lot of fun. And they're relatively cheap. You can usually pick these up around, last time I was doing it, they were like 35, 40 bucks. At least at some of the tool shows. You go on eBay and yeah, it's going to be a lot more than that. What's next?
Hang on. I'm just making sure someone had just posted.
I was thinking of showing this off.
What is that?
This thing. Next, then I got this show.
Should I tell you what you tell? Use your words. Describe it.
This is commonly used by Windsor chairmakers, but anytime you need a round tenon, you have a set of these. This is a cone cutter or a spoke pointer. It puts a point on a spoke. It's basically a really big pencil sharpener. So what we got over here is a pencil sharpener. Looks just like any pencil sharpener, just bigger. Big cone on here. The nice thing that this has, though, is it's got this depth stop in there. I'm going to drop tools. So I can loosen this up, and I can slide this in and out. And this becomes the depth. How much of a cone do I want on the end? And I'm going to stop it like, let's do right there. Tighten that in. And then with this, I can put it on my brace, which is underneath all my other tools. Come on, fit in. I loosened it up too far for the last tool. And we go in. Hey, we found it. And what we can do with this is if I wanted to make a tenon, I need to actually first turn it into a cone so my tenon has something to cut. And so I'm going to actually do it on this board over here that's about 1.5 inches by 3/4. And you'd normally do it on something that's square, but you can do it on rectangular shapes as well. So I'm going to set this on here, and it sounds so cool. I'm just going to go until it bottoms out on that depth stop that I set, right there. And now I've got a pencil. These are a lot of fun. The problem is they're adjusted with a mallet, a plane setting mallet. And so there's lots of fun tools that just have a plane setting mallet to actually do it. But with this spoke, we can now have a center point that we can start a tenoning jig on. A tenon cutter or a tenoner or a hollow auger. It's called a hollow auger because it does the exact opposite of an auger. It, rather than creating the hole, it creates the negative. And so that goes on the same piece.
Okay.
You'd normally have 2 braces set up. But
I was going to say, you should have shown that like 2 weeks ago when everybody was getting ready for school, because they could have done the little, made pencils, put the kids' names on it, and sold it for all these back-to-school pictures. You
Yes.
missed an opportunity.
So with this, now I have this open end here. We can set on here. And this has one blade right here. And so it's cutting the shoulder of the tenon. It's not actually cutting the tenon itself. And so I can set that on here. And we can crank that around. Have it set up right now for a very fine, very clean cut. I could make it more aggressive and make it go much faster.
So what size brace is that?
What's that?
Size is your brace?
This one's a 12-inch throw. So the throw is twice the length of the handle. So if it's 6 inches out, it's a 12-inch. So then we've got this perfect tenon. And this one's actually really nice and clean. What's that?
No, it's a Lego.
It's a what?
Lego.
Lego, yes. And this particular one is really cool. It has a bunch of different features on here. Number one, I've got this depth stop here. So this slides in and out. And it actually has this little foot that stops when it hits the top of the tenon. So I can set exactly how deep I want, how much I want my tenon. And this one is also fully adjustable. So I can crank on this, and I can open this head up, and I can close it down. And so I can set exactly the size tenon I want to match my auger that would drill the hole for it. And so then the blade on here is actually adjustable. So I have this screw that will allow me to do the fine adjustment here. This screw, the slot in it is wallowed out, so that this whole thing can pivot on that screw. Actually, let me go ahead and show you because it's kind of fun to set up. So we loosen this screw and loosen this screw, and this whole thing then slides in and out like that. Just that little movement there. And that's actually the lateral adjustment of this whole thing. So that the lateral adjustment you have in here as well. And then I can set depth of cut. So if I really want it to be aggressive, let me set it to something really aggressive. Be aggressive. And show you how much faster this suddenly cuts. You get a really horrible looking shoulder, but it cuts incredibly quickly. Here, I'll show you a close up of what this shoulder looks like. So this one is actually really nice. Kind of like it. Very clean, sharp shoulder on there, but with a heavier cut, I can put this on.
Does it matter what type of wood you use this on, soft or hard?
What's that?
Does it matter what type of wood you use this on, soft or hard?
Nope. It works for all of them. And so now, I've got this shoulder that's all torn up and busted apart. And the tenon, you can see from here down to here is really nice and clean, and then from there down it's really rough. So it kind of depends on how fast or how clean do you want it to be. But this thing's got all the little adjustments, and there are lots of different hollow augers. Some of them have a bunch of different holes for different sizes. Some of them are just one size only, but they cut a perfectly square shoulder, which is what you want for a lot of your Windsor chairs and things of that nature. You want something that sits in there nicely. You can get some with the rounded swooped shoulder, but it's one of those things that's there are some hollow augers out there you can buy now for power tools, but they tend to have that rounded shoulder that kind of wedge up in there. And to get a nice, clean, sharp 90-degree shoulder, you need one of these that cuts. The iron actually just cuts the shoulder surface. It doesn't cut the tenon surface, just this surface. Every time it goes around, it's a plane cutting the end grain of the shoulder. So it's kind of a really cool tool. A tool that I don't use much because I don't like doing Windsor chairs. But I love playing with this. I love making the tenons just to make the tenons. Any questions on that one?
No, I have 2 tool-specific questions and then just a generic.
Sure, what's that?
So Dan asked, how about talking about brad point batwing center bits?
Brad point batwing. Oh, okay, yeah. Center bits. Ah, here we go. A center bit. These are kind of funky. So a center bit, when you look at it, the point is actually off center. There's a shorter distance from here to here than it is from here to here. And so what this does is as it spins around this point, this is a spur that cuts the outside dimension of the hole. And it's sticking out a little bit farther than this blade. And so as it goes around, it's scoring the hole. And then this blade comes around behind it and removes the material. And so it's exactly like an auger, except for it only does 1/2 of the side at a time. And these are a much older design than augers because they're really simple. They're just a flat piece that has this wing bent up. And even the spur on here is actually bent in a little bit. Let me see if I can show you. So that the point is the center of this whole thing. And let me see if this one's sharp enough. This one's not sharp enough. Let me sharpen this up and I'll show you how it works. Will this work? Yeah, that'll work. And they are a pain to use, in all honesty, but they're really, really cool. So to sharpen it up, I've got a file, and I should be using one with a safe side, but I don't have one with me right now. At least not one that will do this in time. I've got one that's a lot smaller. So
Change your camera.
Oops. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to come across on the top here. Just watching until I get right to the edge. Oop, I tighten that down so it's not moving on me. I want to feel a slight burr on there. Just a couple more passes. There we go. This point doesn't have to be dead sharp, but because it's not pulling the work in, you're actually going to be pushing with this. This is the most important thing. As long as this blade is sharp, you should be okay. This spur should be sharp. The sharper that spur is, the cleaner your hole is going to be. And mine is a little bit out. So let me grab you. This one needs a slightly rounded file on here. You want to do the inside surface, not the outside surface. You do the outside surface, you're actually going to change the diameter that this cuts.
So why do you say it's a pain to use?
What's that?
Why do you say it's a pain to use?
Because they don't pull themselves. Augers have that screw on the end that actually pulls it through wood. You don't have to put any force on it. If you're putting force on it, it's dull. It needs to be sharpened. These, you have to put force into it. And if you're not holding them perfectly straight and clean, they bounce out of the place and they give you a really horrible hole. They also go dull much faster because you only have one set of cutters. With a regular auger, you have 3 cutters. With a wood owl, with a regular auger, you have 2 cutters. With a wood owl, you have 3 cutters. So each one is doing much less of the work. Therefore, it's going to last longer. Let me grab something a little easier to drill through, because I don't want to be at this forever. And then let's put it in here. Go down. Oh, this one's a big one. A little farther. Almost running out. There we go. Maybe. No, now it's just going to pinch up on it. It should, well, no, it's out of balance now. This particular one, let me show you the difference. Here. So a normal auger or a normal bit has this shoulder on here, and the jaw will actually grab this shoulder and that stops it from coming out. This one's just a tapered hunk of steel. And not even that, this isn't square, it's actually slightly rectangular. So this one isn't a great example of it, but it's a larger one, which makes it actually very good for, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it in this other brace I had down here. This will work even better. Yeah, let's put it in this worthless thing. This one, this brace is kind of fun. This brace just has this square hole and a screw, so it doesn't worry about it sticking out. This just goes on here, that tightens down on there, and now it's on. And so just like that, we've got a brace and bit. Oh, little tip. If ever these start jamming up and really are getting hard to turn, this one's starting to, just put a little oil on it. So let me go ahead and do that now.
I'm half disappointed you didn't grab the yellow.
And over the course of the next use or so, it's going to loosen back up. So let's give this thing a try and see what we get. So here, let me zoom in and actually show you what it's doing.
So would you use this for something where you don't want to be careful that you don't go, oh, if you didn't have your little...
I wouldn't use this.
Stop, you wouldn't use it.
Now, so I'll see the spur engaging right there. And so it's cutting the round hole. And now the blade is coming in behind it and moving that out. Nope, see, it didn't cut it clean. My spur didn't engage before the blade did. This one, I have to say, is a bad example because the spur needs to be a little longer. It should be cutting farther ahead. That's one of the reasons why I'm getting all this tear out. And now I'm going until the point just sticks out that other side. Turn it out, flip it around. And with that point sticking out, now we can engage in this side and hopefully get a little cleaner hole. Back it up. Nope. Not much better. And this is one of the places I really hate them, is that when you get close to blowing through, the blade catches in the middle and it just likes to jam up on you here. And there I went through at an angle like that. So let's see if I can actually cut this now. There, we got a hole. So you can see, now I have to be completely honest, this is not a great example of it. This is a fairly poor one. But even the best ones, really well tuned, do not give you a great hole. But if you're doing historical work, you're probably going to want to use those for a lot of it because those were easily made by blacksmiths. The augers with the nice twisted screw, those were very, very difficult to make. They were very expensive, but they made a really nice clean hole. And they could do a lot of work for you because they actually pull it through. You're not pushing on it and trying to get it in. So, yeah, center bits. They are work of the devil. No, actually, they're kind of fun to play with. They're just they're not the bit I grabbed to do some work. Any last minute questions?
Oh, I mean, we have two more. It's 8:59. It's up to you.
Go ahead and throw them.
So Yan wants to know, you showed a sash cutter. Is there a trick to using that in a smaller combination plane? I'm trying to use one with my small Veritas plow plane, but it's so wide I'm having trouble locking it down.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It works with the Veritas plow plane or the 45. It's just a little bit more finicky because you're cutting a wide area. Well, the way they pinch on just the one side, they just hold onto that one side. You really have to make sure that's it's tightened down very, very well. If not, it will want to twist out when you get going on it. And so it's one of those things you really have to crank down on. You might get a pair of pliers and just twist it down a little bit more. but yeah, it can work. But as with anything with the combination planes, when you start doing the finicky things, it's going to take a lot of setup time. It's something you have to test over and over again until it gets tweaked just right. And then you take it over to the actual work, and your first piece, you mess it up. It's just the way they work. But yeah, sash irons are their own ball of pain. So sorry. What's the next one?
All right, this was actually one of the first questions, but I saved it because it wasn't necessarily setup tool specific. So Kenny-Anjanette Horn asks, when you first got into antique hand tools, what was the first tool you yearned for?
Oh, all of them. All of them. Let's see. The first tool I really was looking for and trying to find, because for the first couple years, I generally only bought tools that I needed for a project. I wasn't as much teaching, at least for the first year or so. I was making stuff for myself and showing people along the way. And so usually those tools were things that I needed for a specific project. And probably the first thing I needed to do is I needed to create a rabbet. And I was trying to find a rabbet plane that I could buy for like $10 or less. I was trying to find a shoulder plane. You can't find a shoulder plane for $10 or less, or a rabbet plane or anything like that. And finally, I found on eBay this totally trashed 192. And I cleaned it up and painted it, and it did exactly what I needed it to do. But I bought it for $10, shipping and all. Previously, the nose had broken off. And so a previous owner put in a piece of angle steel, bent it over, and actually made this bull nose for it. And put the adapter on it so you can put this back on. And it actually works really well. And as a little shoulder plane, without any fence or any extras on here, that was the first real big purchase. It cost me $10 to buy this thing. And I didn't tell my wife at the time, because that was a lot of money for us. Yeah, that was, I bought the Harbor Freight chisels, the saw from Menards that ended up being free because it was mail on rebate. I bought a $5 Miller Falls hand plane, a mallet I made myself, clamps that I've had forever or have been given, and that's what I started working with. And so this was the first really interesting thing I had to try and find and build, and it kind of holds a nice place in my heart. I've never only used it that one time, because since then I've gotten better planes for it, but I kind of like this one.
The natives are restless upstairs.
Yeah. So I think that'll do it. I don't think we're going to have a live next week, because my parents are going to be here, and we're probably going to do something with family. So, yeah. So I think that will do it for now. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at the Best in the West this weekend. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.